After basically almost 2 years of the ICJ with South African participation is going after Israel for legitimately defending itself. The Putin look at the ICJ and is like, oh, might as well give me a try, attack a nation, accuse them of genocide for correctly defending themselves. Yeah, this is what's happening. Putin has submitted, or the Russian state has submitted to the ICJ their counterclaim towards the Ukraine and accusing them of committing a genocide, despite the fact that Russia has been doing so, committing genocide. Specifically, one of the examples brought up, and I think rightfully so, is Russia has been kidnapping Ukrainian children for a few years now, which is one of the acts of genocide. But this is not what we necessarily want to talk about today. Many people have covered that well. It's the fact that not only the fact that Russia is bringing the genocide case, but again, that ICJ, the organization that is supposed to, that is the organ, that is the system that is supposed to correctly decide what is a genocide, if somebody is committing a genocide, looked at the Russian case and said, hey, let's give it a try. This seems to be plausible. Let's take a look at it. And Ukraine now needs to respond. Specifically, Ukraine now has 1 year to respond to the Russian accusations. And, then we'll see what is happening from there. Welcome to the Daily Objective. Joining me today is James Valiant, and this is the topic we'll discuss today. Just to point out specifically, Russia charges 41 Ukrainian officials with genocide, and yeah, the ICJ will allow Russia to present its accusations to the court. The indictment states that the officials acted with the intent of committing genocide, which is the biggest part of genocide. It's the sort of the intent in the areas of Donetsk and Luhansk, killing 5,000 civilians since 2014. Now, James, we rightfully criticized ICJ for a long time. But again, what is happening here? Is this the attempt of, either being the neutral state, we go after Netanyahu and the defense minister of Israel, but we also go after Hamas, the Hamas terrorists, even though all the ones that were accused of war crimes have already been killed. So in this case, we'll go after the Russian genocide of Ukraine, but neutrally, we'll also go after the Ukrainian genocide of Russians. What's happening here?
Well, you can see why Putin's doing it. I mean, Putin will say crazy things about, Ukraine. He will say in any kind of rationalization and justification for his aggressive invasion of a neighbor country, Ukraine, he'll say whatever is convenient for him. It's the fact that the ICJ is taking it seriously, I think, is the headline, and that is absolutely the case. Now, they shouldn't even give an aggressor the time of day on such an allegation. Obviously, international law is not law. There is not only no enforcement mechanism, there's no agreed upon standard. And if they try and make rules, they'll redefine the rules. And so since we're right now, and since October 2023, we've been redefining the term genocide among international law experts. And why not take advantage of that? Any act of reasonable self-defense, any act. Israel has gone above and beyond what any defender has done. They should not have done. They should not have done what they did. They will, as we've pointed out many times, they will warn people in buildings in a variety of ways. We're going to bomb that building. You get out of the building. They'll drop leaflets. They'll make announcements. To prevent the civilian slaughter that Hamas has brought upon itself. They should feel the full impact of the slaughter they brought upon themselves. Israel, because they were so restrained, and in the history of self-defensive warfare, unprecedented in their, think of it, trying to feed the local population. Imagine we tried to feed the population of Germany during World War II. You're feeding the Nazi war machine. And so Israel has gone above and beyond to make sure that there isn't a genocide in a way that no other self-defense action in military history has ever done. So they have twisted the concept genocide out of all recognizable meaning. Now, in order to do that, you have to rely on some philosophical ideas that have been percolating in the background, mind you. There's a sort of what we call ethical intrinsicism about killing. Any killing, even in self-defense, is wrong. And of course, this has a pedigree that goes all the way back to the ancient philosophers, or Jesus in the Bible, for example, who says, turn the other cheek, do good to your enemies, the evildoer, submit to the evildoer, love your enemy. I mean, that's how far Jesus goes when he insists that you turn the other cheek. You can't run away. You can't block the punch. Heaven knows you can't punch back. You just suck it up. And so what we're now doing is we're taking this intrinsicist altruist morality. Altruism is the doctrine that humans are sacrificial animals, have no right to their own life, and again, have to basically suck it up when attacked. No, that's evil. That is hatred of life on earth. You have a right to defend yourself and to take every step necessary to make sure that the threat has been annihilated. In fact, in self-defense, you have a right to a disproportionate response. A disproportionate response in self-defense is justifiable. Like an atomic bomb, if that's what you need to do to end the aggression, to end the source of the problem.
So what you're saying, James, is that Ukrainians are anti-Christ. They go against, the teachings.
But like many, it's not even anti-Christ. I mean, many
No,
Christians.
what I mean by that, fully defending themselves, right?
Fully
Not
defending
submitting
themselves,
to
right?
the aggressor.
They're not turning the other cheek. They're not laying down and letting Russia. Russia wanted to take over the whole country. You'll recall when, just a few years back, they were attacking Kyiv. They were trying to take over the whole damn country, and they were pushed out. And as you say, they have been kidnapping Ukrainian children. They are the ones killing civilians in Ukraine. Okay. Ukraine responds by attacking in Russia, and Russia has been saying for a long time, oh, you see, that's a war crime. Or you've been trying
just here, I would even bring up that because, Ukrainians are not attacking Russian cities. I think they should.
Not sufficiently.
Yeah, I think that not at all. When it comes to strikes within Russia, they are targeting like oil sites or
again too restrained, as you point out. Ukraine, like Israel, is not doing what they have a right to do and ought to do to deal with the problem. In fact, Ukraine has look, your children, your homeland is being invaded and attacked. Your civilians are being constantly attacked. And now you're being delicate when you attack in their country, which you have every right to do. Now you're being delicate about their civilians in a way they're not about yours. Again.
Yeah, and it's not even about civilians. Killing soldiers is not okay either. You don't have a right to go into other country and kill soldiers just because they are part of the military.
Correct.
And somehow that like makes it more okay. Russia wouldn't be any more justified in what they're doing, even if they went by every international law, not attacked a single civilian, didn't do anything in that.
Well, insofar as international law, and I guess this is the bottom line that we should just cut to the chase on, insofar as international law restricts what a person can do in self-defense, what a nation can do in self-defense when they have been the victims of aggression. And you see, it was Ukrainian civilians. I mean, that is an important point in one sense, because we're the ones being invaded. Yeah, you're right. It doesn't matter, morally speaking, people are people, and however you die, you die. But the point is, international law has no business, has no right to tell the defender that it can't defend itself, has no right to hamstring reasonable actions taken in self-defense. War is violence. That means a disproportionately greater violent response needs to happen, or you're not engaged in self-defense. You need to take the restraints off the defender. Now, does that mean anything goes? Am I morally in favor of unnecessary atrocities? No, I'm not. But international law is not how you prevent that. You prevent that by killing off the dictator government, the aggressor in the war. You get rid of the source of the problem. You don't say, well, what we're going to do is we're going to give rules to aggressors from now on, which they'll ignore anyway. I mean, there was a convention, believe it or not, against chemical war before World War I. Did that prevent chemical weapons from being used in World War I? No, no. International law is ridiculous on the face of it. Because what you're saying is, in the course of a war, after something happens, we'll then come in and evaluate, right, the tactics of war. Now, there is a fog of war. Civilians are going to be killed. Horrible things happen. War is awful. That is why you want a decisive end to it. That's why you permit a disproportionate response in self-defense. And truly, all the international law that developed from the late 19th century through the post-World War II era and gave us things like the Geneva Conventions is all just a mental fantasy, really, that people are playing. That somehow there's something that aggressors can be constrained with moral, principles. Aggressors are violating all morality. They are to say that an aggressor will restrain itself because of our international law is a myth, is ridiculous. It ain't going to happen. It's never going to happen. War is an ugly business. That's why you want to be very disproportionate, overwhelming, and decisive when you win, when you respond. No, the ICJ, the watch Ukraine respond, because they have a year, as you say, to respond to Russia's accusations. ICJ gives it the time of day. The aggressor, the time of day on these allegations, was they shouldn't. No, since you started, it should be real simple. There shouldn't be an ICJ. If there were such a thing as ICJ, if they were even semi-rational, they would say, you're the aggressor, you have no standing to bring such a claim. But no, they didn't. Now watch the even more perverse thing. Watch Zelensky's government respond. Ukraine, like Israel, should say, fuck off to international law. We do not recognize you. The fact that you've recognized Russia's claim at all shows you are morally illegitimate, and we are completely morally opposed to you. You are evil. You are defending aggression. And that's what ICJ is doing in both cases, mind you. Whether it's Israel or Russia, insofar as they're doing this, allowing Putin's claim, insofar as they're doing that, what are they doing? They are unjust aggressor protectors. So they are the ones. ICJ is protecting military aggressors. ICJ is protecting the ones who commit the atrocities. ICJ, you say, okay, they condemned Hamas too. Yeah, right. No, in going after Israel at all for responding, they are defending October 7th, in fact. And so what the ICJ does is defend atrocities and military aggression and those who start wars. The ICJ, let me just repeat that. The ICJ gives sanction to aggression and atrocity. There's no other way of looking at it. And that should be Ukraine's response. You guys are defending atrocities. You guys are defending military aggression. You are morally illegitimate, and we're not going to respond to you. We have, you are not only nothing, international law that we do not recognize, you are worse than that. You are sanctioners of aggression. You are on our enemy's side, ICJ. In allowing their claim should be Ukraine's response. Ukraine should respond by saying any such international organization is illegitimate, has no moral basis. Worse than that, they sanction the aggressor. We can have nothing to do with those who've sanctioned aggression against us. Israel should take the same stand about the whole United Nations, frankly. Honestly.
We have a super chat from Bonnie. Thank you so much. And somebody's pissing me off. Somebody says, but I often see from, and I consider this like Russian propaganda, Ukraine will not win against Russia. They should settle for the sake of both Russia and Ukraine. And that basically, okay, here is the thing. The Russian, and I think this is why I think, and by the way, Ukraine has been able to get drones as far as Moscow. I think what Ukraine can do is start attacking Russian cities. I think to some extent they don't because they are afraid of what the West might do, and I think to some extent they don't because they might be a little bit afraid of what Russia might do in response as well. But I think morally, Ukraine should absolutely attack Russian cities. We have to realize Russian population, and there is opposition, and I think that's great to see. There is some opposition in Russia, but to large extent, the population is okay or is even supportive of this war. You talk about young people dying. It's Russia and the Russians that are okay with young people, with people from their prisons, with dragging people from whatever they are. Although Russia usually drags people not from St. Petersburg, not from Moscow, but from Siberia. Young people from Siberia or young people from desolate regions, and sending those, or North Koreans to fight in Ukraine because they are running out of people. But no, it's Russia that is behind everything. Russia is not okay with their people dying. Good, get out. This is like
Right.
an easiest thing you can do.
Right.
It's like you're beating up on somebody and you're complaining that he's like fighting you back. You can just stop and get out.
No, what you should do is make the Russians suffer. Make the Russian people suffer. I'm going to say that again. Make the Russian people suffer.
Or not even suffer, but suffer the consequences of their
Yeah.
inaction.
Because, yes, exactly. No, you want it. That's the thing. Putin remains in power because a sufficient number of the population are kind of ignorant of what's going on, unaffected by it. They are affected, obviously, in various ways. And you do want to hit, for example, their infrastructure and their economy as hard as you can, oil refineries and facilities and so forth, so that the Russian people suffer. No, in a war, you have to make the population that supports the aggressor, insofar as they support the aggressor, like the Russian population, seems to be and even if you're just acquiescing in a dictatorship, I'm sorry, every element of that economy is part of the Russian war machine. Every element of the Russian economy is part of the Russian war machine and is a viable target. And shamefully, President Biden, in the wake of the invasion of Ukraine, told the Ukrainians, don't hit within Russia. That is exactly tying one hand behind their back all that time ago. But even Trump can't be relied upon. He disgustingly dressed down Zelensky. He can't even name Russia as the aggressor. So the way Mr. Trump talks about it is little better than the way Biden talks about it. So poor Zelensky and the Ukrainians have to wonder about their support. All that pressure should be off them. Go for it. Do what you need to do. Make the Russian people suffer. When I was a little boy, I tell the story. I was a very small child, and little boys will often hit their big brothers. And I hit my big brother once, boom, like little boys will sometimes do. My brother was older than me and much more mature than me. And he said something very sensible to me. He said, I'm not going to hit you back this time, but I want you to know that I'm older and bigger than you. And should you ever hit me again, I'm going to hit you back. Only I'm going to hit you back 10 times harder. And, my brain wasn't fully developed at the time. I was still a small child, but it left an impression on me. And I never repeated the punch of my older brother because I feared rationally a punch 10 times harder would come in response. And that's the way it has to be. If the Russian people do not suffer, the defense of Ukraine is inadequate. Now, that would be called a war crime based on this theory of moral intrinsicism, this altruism that is conditioning the change in the way the world is looking at war crimes and international law. But it is a change made just for Israel, mind you. And Putin is now going to drive a truck through that change. He will take as much advantage of it as possible. And what it theoretically does is make both sides in every war equally evil, every time. So that anybody can, at any time, if you don't do what Jesus says, if you don't just submit to the evildoer and turn the other cheek and lay down and take it, then you are yourself a war criminal. If you were to act like my brother did and say, we're going to punch you 10 times harder, the punching 10 times harder would always be, rather than the rational self-defense it is, a war crime. That's not how war works. That's not how force and violence works. Force and violence dictates the kind of response that you have to give, a violent, disproportionate response that makes the economy and the people suffer and disables the aggressor. Let's take another analogy. There's a bar fight going on, and so the aggressor punches someone, and the defender punches back and throws the attacker onto the ground. Do you know he won't get back up? No, you do not. You have every right to continue your self-defensive violence until that threat has been neutralized. And that is also the way it has to be looked at. Somehow the common sense of self-defense is thrown out the window. Common sense. What is common sense? No, it is a philosophical idea that has to be justified from the ground up. But look, if you can't see the reality of how you need to respond to an aggressor, you will be the victim of that aggressor ad infinitum. And that's kind of the goal here, isn't it? If Russia can kick up enough moral dust, then what was the super chat that was pissing you off? Yeah, well, they should, for the sake of everybody, since they can't win. Bull.
Yeah, and again, somebody says this kind of pompous ignorance that these Western countries have. Oh, I can't believe it doesn't trust our good intentions of building up military equipment on their border. And again, it's always this kind of I don't like this is evil. It's always the bad countries have all the strategic intentions, have all the just all of their actions are of rational agents. But it's okay for Russia to invade Ukraine because they are afraid of NATO presence. But it's not okay. It's not understandable that Ukraine is afraid of Russian invasion and might want NATO securities, might want EU securities.
No,
it's not okay. It's not understandable that Georgia wants to join NATO, that has already part of their regions occupied by Russian state right now. That is not okay. But Russia invading sovereign countries for some vague notion of NATO that has never invaded a single country. There's not a single example of NATO nations going together and invading some country. It's always either the UN does something, there's like a UN coalition, or the individual countries do something.
And
NATO has never done.
My God, NATO should be more have more preemptive strikes and be more forward. I mean, that's the thing. Membership. You're absolutely right. Membership in NATO is not a threat to Russia, objectively. Even Putin knows that. To even go down that path is insanity. You're going down the path of the deluded mind of an evil man, and going down the logical flow chart of an evil human being is no problem. The West brought it on themselves because of what? No, there's good guys and there's bad guys. There's dictators like Putin, and there's relatively free countries, okay, like Britain, like the United States, like Israel, that respect individual rights to some extent and have a semi-civilized, country. There are good guys.
Here, I wouldn't even say to some extent. The West recognizes individual rights. Russia doesn't.
There's a qualitative difference.
Qualitative difference is between UK and America, not between America and Russia.
No, I would say that's more of a quantitative difference because both of us are mixed economies. That is to say, advanced welfare states with some capitalism and some socialism. And so there's a difference in degree between UK and US, is the way I would put it. The difference in kind, the qualitative difference, is between dictatorships and the civilized countries, to the extent we have civilized countries in this world. I have a moral ideal that neither the United States nor the United Kingdom live up to. The lands that generated this moral ideal and made it a reality in my mind, a real possibility in my mind, because at one time there were ideas like individual rights percolating from the environment that were, or the Enlightenment, the Enlightenment that were civilizing the world and freeing the world and creating unprecedented wealth, prosperity, and the possibility of individual freedom and happiness. Because of that, and they've totally betrayed it and they're receding on it. And in fact, this whole new understanding of international law is a great indicator of how far the civilized world has declined. In fact, they give the time of day. They're international organizations. If the West cannot now look at the United Nations in a critical way, in fact, all of these international bodies, the ICJ, the UN itself, we talked about UNRWA the other day. If the West cannot say, look, cooperating with evil dictatorships is the problem. No, giving them moral sanction is the problem. Giving them aid, comfort, and support has been the problem. America creates its own enemies. We fed the Russians, and got Stalin. We fed the Germans and got Hitler. And every time America creates its own enemy, it's busy creating its own enemy with China right now. That's how it happens. Evil is not strong. They're parasites. And only the sanction of the West really keeps them alive and going. And this is a classic example of the West sanctioning them. The ICJ is an evil, pro dictatorship, pro aggressor, pro atrocity institution. That's why I defined it earlier that way. They are in favor of Hamas in attacking Israel at all, whatever they say about Hamas technically. They are in favor of aggression and all that Russia has done in Ukraine by allowing Russia even a hearing in the ICJ. Insofar as you do that, ICJ, you are illegitimate, and any sane civilized country should say you are not just nothing, you are the enemy. ICJ, you are part of the problem. You are sanctioning aggression and atrocity.
So we have to start wrapping up. So I'll just read something and I'll introduce you to my future foreign policy if we ever get it better one that I've had a theory on. Somebody says NATO couldn't even defend Yugoslav civilians when they broke up. Come on. I mean, again, this idea that both NATO intervention is bad, but also it's like not good. It's like, what are you even saying? But again, this is my, I call this map erasure theory. I think in the Oval Office, there should be like a big map. Like imagine like a wall like this, there should be a map. And whenever a bad country attacks a Western nation or threatens American interests, Donald Trump or whoever is in the White House should have a rubber and just go and of the country that just attacked the U.S. I think that's my map erasure theory.
Map erasure theory. Well, the point is that, and I would look at it, a dictatorship is not good for its own people either. No, we have a right to do everything we need to defend themselves. Erasure if necessary. Absolutely. Think about that. Are you saying then that we don't have a right to do whatever is necessary in self-defense? We do. We do. Now, I would still, however, look at it even more broadly. The Russian government is oppressing the Russian people and hurting them, killing them right now, just as the Japanese Empire was killing Japanese people. Look, it didn't take one atomic bomb. They were indifferent to the first atomic bomb. No, probably not indifferent, but that wasn't sufficient to get the unconditional surrender that was required. 2 atomic bombs were required. Best thing that ever happened to Japanese culture. The Japanese people today are thriving, prosperous. They're not going to go to war with the United States.
Not even that. They idealize Americans. If you look at Japanese art, if you look at any American represented in Japanese art, it's this buff, blonde hair, like a masculine guy. Like I would recommend people checking out like Japanese culture and the way they now view Americans. They now view English language. They now view general Western culture. But we do really have to wrap up. So just quickly, James, where can people find you?
They can find me here. Please do consider becoming a paid member of the Ayn Rand Center UK. If you want to understand the philosophy that informs, our perspective on international affairs, you can get a deeper dive if you become a paid subscriber and learn about the philosophy of Ayn Rand, objectivism, which informs it's the moral basis for all of our commentary here. The right to self-defense, the right not to die from an aggressor. And to do what's necessary in the face of aggression. Believe it or not, that requires philosophical sanction today. If you haven't already automatized that idea and you can't already see how evil the ICJ is as such, and you want the background that will tell you and justify self-defense and condemn aggression and dictatorship, check out the philosophy of Ayn Rand. Objectivism. And one of the best places you can do that is right here if you're a paid subscriber.
Is Israel finally banning the Arab parties? Well, that is what we'll discuss on the reality show. Link to that is in the chat, so make sure to join us in just a few minutes on the reality show. Thank you, James, for joining me today. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and bye-bye.
Be safe.